Thank you very much and welcome to tonight's first regular meeting of council for 2024. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Before we go to the adoption of the agenda, any opening remarks from members of council? Seeing none, I just would like to add, after the circumstances of tonight, I didn't look at it maybe in the same light as other ones, but the fact that I live 2 minutes away from the township office, we're going to give direction, just for council's aware, we're going to give direction in seeing our options that we would have, whether it's virtual or looking at if there was a last minute cancellation of council. It's not so much we're here, but we also, or not myself, but staff has to get home after, and it could be, so we're going to have Blake maybe lead them with a plow. So with that said, we're going to have the adoption of the agenda. Okay.
Be it resolved that this regular meeting now open at 6:30 p.m. moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Shane.
All in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to adoption of the agenda.
Be it resolved that the agenda be approved as presented, moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
Any comments or questions on agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and nature thereof? Seeing none, we do not have delegation this evening, so we're going to move on to our adoption of minutes of previous meetings.
Be it resolved that the following minutes be approved as presented. Regular meeting December 12th, special meeting December 21st, moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
All or any questions in regards to their agendas? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to receiving the monthly staff report and recommendations.
Be it resolved that the following monthly reports be received: Arena, CAO, Finance, Fire, Bylaw Enforcement, Building, Public Works, moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Any questions to our directors on that? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Densham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few different questions, so let me start with the finance. I noticed a comment on there saying that they were making some improvements on the website, so that's very welcomed. Thank you for that. That's really good news. One thing that I noticed, though, is that to find those enhancements, those changes, you actually have to go through the menu, and I can take anybody from finance or whoever through this afterwards if you like. Whereas it just kind of made sense. If you click on finance, it gives you a nice almost blank landing page, rather than going up to the menu or along with going up to the menu, maybe putting buttons there, because the selections in the menu are not that easy to find. Once you find them, you get to see exactly where it is. But the landing page would be a perfect spot to put those exact same items. So I can go through that with yourself, Mary, or somebody else afterwards if you like. I think it would help with the usability. But what I have seen, the improvements, it does look good. It does look good. On the fire report, Nancy, and there was a ambulance assist, 5 for the month and 6 year to date, which to me just kind of stood out to be strange, like that there were so many in 1 month. And I wonder whether that's an emerging trend or just a circumstance that's unusual. Because
Or a typo.
Or a typo, yeah, because there was five in 1 month given and only 1 for the rest of the year. So
we've had a busy December, sir, for medical calls.
So I'm wondering if there's anything that's shifting in the way that the paramedics respond or whatever that may create an emerging trend for us, or whether this is just purely circumstantial.
Well, the trend is medical calls will be changing as well, and we are tiered response. We're back with tiered response. We were not during COVID, so these numbers were a little skewed because we weren't participating in some of these medical assistance for obvious reasons. And now that we started back on our tiered response this year, and then sadly on the last little while, we've had a few medical assistance and medical calls where we've had to be called out first. That means they're responding a little later than we are. But that's going to be changing as well. Some of their criteria is changing as well with the new gen system coming in. So some of their call out and some of their questions and some of their coding is going to change. So that may alleviate some of the calls as well. So it's gonna be very different years to manage these calls.
Okay, so it sounds like you're aware of it.
Yeah,
That's what
yep.
First and foremost concern, and that we're not seeing something that's gonna put undue pressure on our volunteers or whatever. Two more, if I might.
If I can interject, because
Go ahead.
in regards to that, I just have a quick question. So do we have the committee, like our fire chiefs throughout SDNG, are they in discussions with, like, this is not just a one-way road that they're telling us what, or how is that work?
Actually, the commander of the SDG paramedics met with all of the SDG chiefs. We meet on a monthly basis now. We started that up again last year. So all the SDG chiefs meet every month. It's been a very, very good reunion of thoughts, process, and changes. We're actually building, bridges so that maybe this department has that, and then this we can use. So mutual aid and so forth is starting. But yes, we were able to speak with the commander of the paramedic services with our group.
Perfect, thank you. Go ahead.
And actually, just
Exactly.
one last thing on Public Works, Blake. So there's a mention of new phones and tablets. And I think that has to do with partially with how you give feedback into the system on road maintenance and stuff. I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, help educate me a little bit on why we need new phones and tablets and how that feeds into the service that we provide.
Well, the new phones is throughout the township, they changed to Rogers, so the new, but there's no difference from what we had before. We got a I-13 and they was upgraded. And so we got all new phones. We set them up, and all the guys who had phones and all that, they're basically in the same boat, but they're all brand new phones. And the tablets there, we for Mr. Compliance, that's our road patrol, which is I know the counties are trying to develop something. We had a session with Adam Gadet showing what we have. And our tablets, like we were looking, our tablets are, I can't recall when I started, it would be 05 maybe with the tablets, or maybe it was after that. For our road patrol, and so they were Windows 7. So the new systems and the new upgrades, they got to be a Windows 10 or above. So basically, I'm borrowing 2 tablets from South Glengarry that they don't use, that had Mr. Compliance. They basically don't use them. So I said I'll just borrow them now, because we do have Mr. Compliance, but our tablets are outdated. So we can stay with this until they figure out what's going to be best. But there is some correspondence that Adam Gadet, he's the one doing the programming, that he kind of likes the Mr. Compliance, what it can do. Not saying he can't make something similar, but we'll leave it at that. And I'm trying to get this Mr. Compliance back online, so we have that documentation when we do have lawsuits. They want that kind of information, how we patrolled, and it's documented, and the call outs and what the guys did and all this stuff. So it is a benefit. We'll wait and see what the counties have, but they're not there yet. So
right now, if I understand, just to summarize, it sounds like we're still exploring what the right solution is. We're using some right now, but at some point in the future, you're going to come with a recommendation on how we should set up.
well, my gut feeling is that people are also looking at Mr. Compliance in the other municipalities. Just a gut feeling. I hate to say this live, but I don't think they can develop a program that's been developed for so many years, and a lot of more input into this program, what they can do, what you can get out of it. And it was designed and built with the adoption of the intact insurance to how to mitigate lawsuits. You have to be able, like, so that it wasn't just done overnight. They had the insurance involved and how you can mitigate the lawsuits with the documentation, electronic, digital, electronic mapping on it, exactly what you're doing. This is not just wintertime, this is year round for minimum maintenance standards. So that's potholes or whatever's in the standard, it's in the program. So, but we'll wait and see if Adam can pull it off, but right now, we have the program and we might as well, with Sarah's blessing, she's lending us the tablets and we might as well carry on and have that documentation until the counties come up with their solution and see what the feedback across the SD&G and the townships are.
On that note, Blake, so speaking South Glengarry, you're saying are getting away from it? Is that what the?
That's why I hate to say this publicly, but the program is like, I know it very well. I mean, I had it with when Barry was here and all that, when we used it. It's fairly simple to run. When Sarah came in there, they said they didn't use the tablets, it was no good. But it's like any other thing, it's depends on who the person is, if they want to work with it or they want to not work with it. It's well known that some people just don't like to change, and she wasn't using it and she didn't have any clue of the background of it. All she knew, she had these tablets sitting there and she canceled the prescription because nobody would use it.
So with that said, the other 5 municipalities, are they like this, Mr. Compliance? Is that something that's throughout the other municipalities of SD&G?
Basically, I was the only one before South Glengarry went on. And I didn't know they went off, but anyway, North Glengarry, Tim Wright, he likes it. He's waiting to see what happens with the counties because the counties are saying they're building something. I know I'm close with Jamie in North Dundas, and he likes it too because we had a demonstration and a web, what do they call it? Webinar with Mr. Compliance, and I had North and South Dundas on it. Tim couldn't get involved, but he was also gave the demonstration before. Sarah had something else going on, and I guess South Stormont has, what's that intelligence thing that they said last year? They're going, and what is that?
So that's it. Are we looking at, is that going to be budget implication coming next month in regards to?
It'd be no more than what we did last year. Like we always had Mr. Compliance, and there's an annual maintenance fee of $2,000, and we have 2 tablets, so it's just $2,000 for the annual fee, and that we've been doing that for years.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Any further questions in regards to the staff report? Go ahead, Councillor Bajelli.
Just one question for our CAO. It was in respect to just the very last line about the renovations at the school, that we'll need to meet with the engineer if the building must be post-disaster due to being the emergency operations center. What does that, if the building must be post-disaster?
The building code requires that any certain buildings, if they're used for public
Emergency Operations Center.
Emergencies, or for that sort of thing. Post-disaster means that it can survive hurricanes or earthquakes or tornadoes. So there's certain things built into these buildings that are stronger than normal buildings, and it's mostly just public buildings that this is done for. So we this building is not post-disaster, obviously, because it's very old, but it is used as the emergency operations center. And so while we're going to be retrofitting that building, we have to double check and make sure whether or not we do require post-disaster, because that could change our renovation quite a bit. So that's what that means. I haven't got that information yet. So hopefully not.
Major dollars.
But this is just something that Andre brought up, our CEO brought up, because he said, you know, most places have their emergency operations center in the municipal hall, and some municipal halls are older. And, you know, it's probably quite sure nobody pushed the issue, even if it does say so in the, I think it would be for new builds. I'm hoping it's not for a retrofit. So that's where we're at.
So we're not, okay.
Yeah, basically. Right.
So I put the call to our CEO today on that specific question because I'm not looking at spending, you know, extra thousands of dollars for, and I feel that this is not a new build that could potentially, I think that we're just,
Yeah, I
you know,
don't think
it's
so either.
the inside, like we're not even putting structural walls. It's all basically
But
cosmetics.
these are things that do come up when and you have to think of it. Because you don't want to get caught, you know, 3/4 of the way through the retrofit, and then somebody goes, oh, by the way, this should be post-disaster, you know? So,
Any further questions? Seeing none, the motion was read, so yeah, so all in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to the Economic Development Officers Working Group meeting.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont received these Economic Development Working Group minutes and information from the December 13th, 2023 meeting for information purposes. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
Any discussion, Counselor or Deputy? I didn't see, did you?
Yeah, I want to,
So
but he's first.
I'll start, well, I didn't see, so I'll go with Counselor McDonald.
Okay, well, I was gonna say, really nice to see that the county approved the RIP, the Regional Incentive Program, at $250,000 for this year. And I saw as well that the application closed by the end of February. I'm just wondering if that is something that our residents can access, correct?
Absolutely.
And can we do some kind of a promotion of that via our social media? Because I find it's a really great program for local businesses. I know what can turn them off is the application forms sometimes, or the processes. But I know in the past, I know Mary, you've helped people in the past. And the staff can provide help to people a little bit with time permitting. I'm not saying it's that easy, but just to promote it, because if we don't, then someone else will get that money for their township and we'll miss out.
Tara's good as well to promote it and to help with application, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, and I sit on that committee as well, the selection committee, so and I 100% agree that we should be promoting it. I already have seen the county's promotion on Facebook and shared it, so I encourage anybody who spots that to share it as well. Yes, last year we had two businesses that took advantage of that in North Stormont. It's for everybody, and it's not quite the same as the CIP. It's actually targeted for bigger projects, although we had some smaller ones. So if some businesses have some significant projects, that's good. You're right. The intake is coming up very, very soon and so we need to get on that. They've already started booking meetings for it. So, but on the bigger side of that, and to your point about the fact that, you know, we're bringing it up at the council table versus having an economic developer in-house who's watching for things like that. You'll also see in our correspondence, there was a correspondence from Lisa Thompson, and Minister Lisa Thompson, about some funding that's coming in for rural economic development specifically. There was another email today, and my fear is that we're missing a lot of opportunities. I know that there have been some recent thoughts on how we should attack economic development, but I think it's something that, you know, I pushed for a long time. I thought we had some momentum going, and we did when we got our economic developer hired. Too bad he found other stuff, but we need to get some real intentional traction on this, whether that be hiring to replace or whether that be some other solution. We need to get some momentum going, and not to put you on the spot, Mary, because you're interim and filling out, but I felt it necessary to voice my opinion on that. Like I say, I think we have coming up in our agenda, some other thoughts on other positions in here, but I think if anything, we need somebody who's watching for the economic goodness of our municipality. And Tara does a great job. I want to thank Tara because she does keep an eye out for us and she does help. She will help individual applicants actually sit down with them and write out for the RIP. But again, it's just not enough compared to all the other municipalities who have a dedicated resource there. So.
And also, I'll just enter, so with regards to that, we can maybe reach out to Todd at the counties and potentially go through our social media aspect and then just put it, maybe he's already done, if it's on our website, if it's on our pages of the township, but just to kind of keep it moving. Todd potentially could grab it from, it's a county incentive, so he could take it and make sure that our residents get well aware of the process. Second is, as Deputy Mayor Densham mentioned, so just the fact, I know we don't have an economic development. I seen that there was a few municipalities that send more than one person. It's unfortunate not to have, or at least a representative, just to bring back the feedback of this. So we get it in writing, but it just may be out of staff to have somebody that would have attended, can have some value, and also bring some of the value. Each municipality was given their take on what they accomplished or what they're working on, where we're kind of that's with not really anything being commented.
I know Craig does normally attend those, but again, as a CAO, you only have so much bandwidth available to do that.
Yeah.
So to take any actions.
Councillor Bajal.
Just actually to echo, that's exactly where I was gonna go with my comments, where you jumped on, is that we are not represented at the table. It's great to get the minutes and to be able to review the minutes, but it is nice to have someone at the table, even if that is one of us. I have absolutely no problem. We have obviously we have the schedule of when they're gonna be meeting next, until such time as we do have an economic development officer. If maybe we could put the call to all of council, whoever may be available on that day, if we could send someone from our table, just as a mouthpiece, really.
Yeah.
And representative of
So
the township.
maybe just note that down, and that's something that could be brought up for discussion. Any further discussions on? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to the annual management review meeting minutes.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont receive these drinking water review minutes from the December 13th, 2023 meeting for information purposes. Moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Any discussions on? It is a fairly intense report to read and try to get an understanding. I'm not sure when we usually get a yearly report from, whether it's Don that comes in just to kind of voice how we're doing and that kind of stuff. Is that something, is there a schedule that we usually end that in the spring or?
Yes, and we have had it before when like I think I brought up late last fall about with the budget and Don and the direct questions you have. Like I communicate back and forth with Don, and we actually have a meeting set up for Thursday on the quality environmental QE management system. That's something that is regulated, and so we do go through all that, and same as capital projects and all this. I do have meetings with her, correspond with what's coming up and the facts of this and that. We did talk today about. I did ask for last year to say, well, I should maybe, because they do this for all their systems out of the Chesterville hub. So I said, but you don't do them all together. That I like to just sit in on the North Stormont review, and I kind of know it, but then basically it's just like you said about economic development. You're there where you can pinpoint questions on the spot otherwise you're looking at reports and then questioning after, where you have the group together and talk about certain things. But it's a annual thing that has to be done through regulation, and we've been complying with all the regulations for the number of years, and basically, if you want and you have different questions, like I said, it shouldn't be at the budget meeting, because that's gonna drag you down quite a bit if you ask water and sewer questions. I mean, yeah, the budget, yes, but to ask other stuff about the water and sewer, I mean, that's going to take time.
Well, I'm thinking that we're going to hopefully be requesting maybe meetings with them as we deal with our stormwater issues. So
Yeah,
hopefully that's sooner than later. And maybe at the same time, we could go quickly through if council has questions to make sure that the system, they're responsible to make sure that our water
Yeah.
plants are in order. So if there's no other questions, we'll carry as far as getting the report. All in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to the accessibility compliance report.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont received this 2023 accessibility compliance report for information purposes. Moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
Any questions? Go ahead, our Councillor Bajelli.
Just a quick question on this. So I've seen many government reports, obviously, when compliance report are required. But it seems like it's very, I would say, cut and dry in the fact that they don't require any elaboration on yes or no. They're kind of just taking our word. If you click yes down the board, then that's it. They consider you in compliance without, unless you get selected for an audit where they might be in for more. Outside of that, it seems like there's really no. Okay. Recently, like this year, or?
Yes. Depending on your answers, it comes out with other questions, but they're not printed.
Right.
It's just a summary of them. This we have to post online. It's one of our compliance. We have to post online, and we were audited 2 years ago. And we did not meet our compliance, so we had to redo some changes on the human resource policy. If you'll notice on our human resource policy that's being presented later, there's a whole new section added to the back because our policy did not meet the accommodations and so forth. So we rewrote, or at least the office rewrote, or I rewrote our customer service and our HR policy to meet the requirements of the accessibility.
So the ministries are really just taking everybody's word for it when they answer. yes,
Until they
that-
go
until
provide
they-
the
until
paperwork.
They actually come in.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to human resources policy.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont receives this report regarding the employment standards policy and approves the recommended changes as outlined. An amending bylaw shall be prepared. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Shane.
So that's a fairly lengthy report. Any questions on that? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Densham.
Yeah, I'm fine with the recommendations, and I think it's always good to be up to date on this. Where I was expecting to see some changes was in section 30, prohibited activities, where it's still fairly vague on reporting to work. 30.1A, reporting to work or working in an impaired state or using legal or illegal substances which could produce impairment during work hours. That's pretty much it. That covers everything. And I was expecting to see more detail in that area. So I don't know if that can be another look, and we can have another look at that. I guess just as a follow-up, what would be better? Would it be better to go back and take another look at that and come back with another version? Or would it be better to approve the changes now and then we go do another approval in the future?
I can take it back to council on the next meeting with the changes.
Okay, thank you. At least I don't speak for all of council, but that's my input.
Any further questions? Boom, seeing none. In regards, Mary, there's one and it was brought up with, I think, a sort of a team building, but I seen here I don't know if it was in there or I think it was changed, but we are accommodating 3 days of team building per year so I'm not, am I correct on, I don't have my book, but am I correct on, was that added to this year or was that just that was added?
Yes, that's new. Yeah.
Okay, because I say 3 days, it's kind of, if say, for example, if there was a big person in the community or somebody that passes away and the township's really affected where they want it, then I see that as not needing an HR policy to accommodate. I'm just saying I would rather see to council's discretion. I can see one in regards to we had
What section is that?
I have it written down, but I'll have to
Okay.
read it to, I just, to see, like, there was one, and I'll use the example, was the department built made up of a baseball team to play against the 5 municipalities, which I think it's great. It was an afternoon tournament that the staff gets to go and enjoy it. I support that 100%. I'm just saying, now we see 3 of them, and I'm just kind of, I know, but I would rather see because I don't know what the other 3 would be, but at council's
Well,
discretion,
it-
leaves it
it-
open.
If we. How is it worded?
Because it's talking about closing down the office. That's my concern. It's,
Yeah. Well, it would require closing the office if it were a team building exercise for the whole team. You know,
so it's 12.11.
12:11. Okay, let me
Yep.
read that. Yeah, okay, appropriate notice will be given to any office closure up to 3 times per calendar year.
I can
Up to
see-
3 times, not necessarily 3 full days, it's up to 3 times. So
It's just-
that means it could be a half day here or there. Like you say, a half day for a ball tournament or a half day for a golf tournament or, you know, that sort of
It's
thing.
just if we put 3 up to 3, it's now open to, and we always fall back to, it's sitting there written in red. But no, I'm just, I'm just kind of, you could have a team building where you do it with roads, do a certain thing, or maybe one, and you're not closed down, because this is literally saying about closing down the office.
Mhm.
And that's where I think we have to be careful. So it also has to be up to council's discretion because of
Okay.
what, like I
So
said,
it should be counted.
I think council supports it, like in regards to last summer with the baseball, we didn't have anything implemented. I strongly believe in but I just don't want to go too far, especially when you're dealing with closing.
So are you suggesting not 3 times per year or just at council's discretion?
Well, the one, like I said, I want to have, like, I don't have an issue with one whether it's baseball tournament or whether it's something else.
It
But when
could
you're
happen
going
more than one time a year.
If it's more than one time, it would have to come through and council kind of say, okay, I support
Okay,
closing,
okay.
Yeah.
any additional.
Well, I agree. I think I don't mind if you have 3 good professional development things for certain departments of the staff to take per year. I have no problem with that. I think to your point, closing the office once per year would be my threshold to close the office. If you can do it without closing the office,
Mhm.
and it adds value or whatever, then I would support that as well. Up to 3
Okay.
times.
Okay, well, we'll rejig that.
Good. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the HR policy? Or with,
Maybe-
sorry,
Coming back.
coming back with
Defer.
the changes?
Maybe.
Yeah,
Should we just
so
defer it?
were so it's a deferral that we would be best to do?
Yeah.
Perfect. So,
Should have-
who moved? Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Densham and Councillor Shane.
Do we want to
Okay with them
defer it?
deferring?
If we could, just for timeline, I'm not sure when you want to implement, but there's a few things that we can look at and bring it up at the next, whether the upcoming meetings. We won't stipulate an exact date, but we'll leave that in your hands. Moving on to municipal bylaws, 8.1 temporary borrowing.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 01-2024, being a bylaw to authorize temporary borrowing, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed this 9th day of January 2024. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor McDonald.
So that's a regular yearly thing that we do. Any questions or in regards to motion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on to strategic plan, final report, 2024.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont receive and approve the 2024-2028 strategic plan as written with the amendment of a review and reporting component as requested at the November 28th, 2023 council meeting. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Any questions, Deputy Mayor Densham?
I'm sorry I didn't catch this earlier. It's around the EDO. So again, I'm very happy with how it's portrayed as it's actually listed as one of the top items. Economic development is listed, not necessarily that they're in order, but it was the top item listed in the priorities. But what's not there that is there for the recreation programming is hire a recreation director, but we don't have an economic developer. And I know, like I say, we're potentially examining different options there, but I'd love to see added to the answer or to that objective is ensure that dedicated EDO resources are in place to drive economic development forward. So that leaves room to how we fill that. It doesn't necessarily mean we go right ahead and hire an economic developer. I'd love to see that sentence, but I'm open to discussion on different opportunities. Which ensure dedicated EDO resources are in place to drive economic development forward. As a fourth priority or a fourth objective inside economic development. And there's a reason I state it that way. I need to talk about it or not like to. The other item I have on the strat plan, and it's just a comment on the side. One of the things that's brought out there, and I agree with it wholeheartedly, is that we want to look for opportunities to share with the counties. And there's been a lot of discussion around that in the at the county table as well. But the one I'm always afraid, especially in big institutions or government institutions, that a pendulum can be swung too far in one direction. It's one thing to collaborate and work together, which I think we need to do more of. It's another where we get so much, we swing it so far that we start to lose our identity. We start to get overshadowed. I know even the mayor has mentioned that about the waste management. We want to be at the table because we want to be sure that North Stormont's interests are on there. So it's really just a comment that we always have to keep that in mind, that as we continue to look for opportunities to share with the counties, we need to be careful that we don't, because we are the smallest of all the municipalities, that our particular flavor doesn't get overshadowed by some of the bigger things that may be taking place. And again, it goes back to the EDO. A lot of good stuff can happen, but when all the EDOs are sitting at the table and we're not there, when it comes to shaping things like the RIP program and things like that, it may not have enough of a flavor that matches who we are as North Stormont. So it's just a general comment.
Do you want me to, do you trust me to put that sentence in there under economic development number 4? And
If everybody's comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor Bergelli.
I'd like to kind of hear the reasoning a little bit more why that way, as opposed to going to hire an economic development officer, because we were there, that's where we had one. Frankly, if we don't grow the economy, having a recreational director is moot, because we won't be growing enough to sustain a salary like that, period. So, you know, I'm okay with taking it to black and white. We need to hire an economic development officer. But if there's other reasoning that you want to elaborate why you want to go that way, then.
My other reasoning is, it will come next month at budget, but now we're talking about hiring a rec director, which we did not have. a year ago, we were talking about hiring an economic development that we did not have. And to have those two roles filled in now, I'm starting to see, okay, wait a minute, maybe we gotta see part communication with one side of it with EDO or the other way around. You got EDO rec, but it's just that with the size, I understand, we always talk about the size of the municipality, but you cannot say the size of the municipality because we probably have more rec facilities than pretty much all the other municipalities in SDNG, even more so in Prescott Russell. So as far as 4 fire departments, we got a fleet probably bigger than Cornwall, and we don't have quite the same tax levy. So I'm just saying we have to sit down, and I know the strat plan was to, let's look at, we have an arena that I feel that we can up the ante. We've got the recs to bring somebody involved. Economic development, we had hired and maybe would have changed things after we would have seen, we never got the real benefit of seeing Daryl. It was a 2-month stint, and then unfortunately it fell through with him getting, I guess, a bigger opportunity. But at the same time, before we go too fast, I'd like to bring it to discussion, that budget, and see, okay, what the roles that we're looking at and bringing it to, looking at the wish list, basically.
So if I could, then I would suggest that if that's what we want to look at, and I understand that, but to put in a part 4 in economic development in the plan that's going to sit there for 4 years, and hire a rec director in there, we're kind of, again, putting the cart before the horse here. So if we're gonna morph this position, which I'm not opposed to, I'd like to learn more about, then we shouldn't be pigeonholing ourselves saying, but we need to hire a recreational director as well. So I think if Mary, if you are gonna kind of tweak the economic development in adding a 4th bullet point, there needs to be a softening of that rec programming point 2, hire a recreational director to revisit or explore, softening the language in there. So we're not locking it into the strategic plan one way, saying, yes, hire this position, but here we're going to leave it vague.
Yeah, go ahead, or Deputy Mayor.
And actually, that isn't what I was referring to. That what the mayor was talking about was there was some discussion about how at the county level they deliver economic support, and whether or not they were going to beef that up to try to do more coordination at the top. And I don't feel comfortable going much more deep than that at this point. But I agree 100% with you. I personally, I would prefer to hire an economic developer in there. It took me all last term to convince council, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to have to keep working at this. But in my opinion, and I was sort of saving this part of the discussion for when we got down to the rec role. I think an economic developer has the potential to have a much greater impact on the economics of our municipality than a rec director would, in my opinion. So I'm not saying we shouldn't get a rec director, but what I'm saying is that we shouldn't sacrifice an economic developer for that. And again, that's the way I feel. That's the way I felt all last term as well. So again, if we want to have that discussion here, if we want to put it off to budget or whatever, that's my thoughts.
Any thoughts from other members of council? Go ahead, Councilman Dodd.
I think it would be better to discuss this at budget, but I would lean more towards seeing economic development delivered through the county than having a specific position for that person. I don't know if the work is there for that person. My experience with it is different than Steve's and Adrian's though, so I think it is worth the discussion. It's just there's a lot of positions to fill, and it is really challenging with the dollars we have on the table. But you know, I also don't necessarily feel comfortable changing the strategic plan report too much, considering there was a lot of input from many people. And in order to respect that, to sort of just insert things that are kind of vague at the last second doesn't really feel great. So it's a bit of a challenging one for me, but I don't like I am actually okay with what you propose as a soft addition. And I think it strikes a balance to say, let's have this conversation continue. But I don't think it should be modifying what's in there, especially since that recreation job is literally on the agenda for today to discuss, like why change it? But I don't know, it's all kind of, this seems to happen, right? All these things come together at the same time.
And I'll just add, so what I tend to see is, and I'm not putting down any role but if you look at Peter Young as the county planner, but he's also our township planner, but we also have a junior planner that's working. And I would possibly see potentially having a junior position, that works in collaboration with Tara, has representation at the committee meeting, and you can get somebody that's starting out that could build into something that then we could generate and see the impact and potentially maybe change but that sort of is just to go full blown eg dev and then rec director. It's just we're adding, and it's going to have a big impact on our budget, and it's just something that I'd like to, because of, again, as mentioned, Tara is there. We don't have the county supporting anything to do with rec. And when you're dealing with facility like the arena, which I think right now it's a subsidized service that we're offering in not just our municipality, across every municipality, but the more we can work at trying to raise the revenue, to match up with expenses. Same thing with all the facilities that we have. I think the rec could have a big impact on that aspect. So again, next month is going to be budget. Potentially, it's going to be requested to staff to prepare a job description that will blend to what our needs would be, which maybe would be easier once we see a description of what maybe could work. But to come out and say 4 or 37 and a half or whatever hours of everything, it gets to the point where we have to align revenues with the work related staff.
Yeah, oh, fair enough, but I personally, I really don't like the way that this played out then. We went into the strat planning with the assumption that we had an economic developer in place, with the assumption that the budget would cover an economic developer in place. Now, we're talking about, we want to hire a rec director in the strat planning. We're trying to pull the trigger on that to be quick and responsive to the strat planning, and I respect that. But at the same time, we're saying, well, let's just can the whole idea of the economic developer, which, like I said, was one of our key deliverables for our strat planning. So again, personally, I think we need to take hiring the director off the table at this point in time until we can have a thorough discussion on that, because again, it's like we're pitting one against the other, and we haven't necessarily even spent the time to say whether or not there's a more coordinated approach to how we can deliver both. Making sure that we're not tipping too far, like I say, in one direction versus another at the moment. So if that's the way we're going, whether or not we leave it in, I don't think I can support and won't support the new business hiring the rec director at this point until we have a clear path of where we're going with the economic development solution.
Go ahead, Mary.
At this point, we're not hiring a rec director. We're just looking at the job description to see what you think. This is only for discussion. I mean, it is in the strategic plan, obviously. It says, and it's pretty clear, it says hire. But it's still always a council decision. Always.
Okay, that's good to know. But it also didn't say in our strat plan not hire an economic developer to backfill for the resource that we had, right? And that's the way it's being positioned right now, is that we are now saying, let's get rid of economic development individual for the sake of paying for a rec director. And that never was part of the discussion when we built the strat planning. So I don't think, yeah.
Any other comments? Seeing none. Where were we?
So we can carry it, defeat it, or defer it. The resolution. For the.
So right now,
strat
yeah.
plan.
So we're on the strategic plan final report. So, well,
Do a motion.
Yeah, I'm fine. Okay, so I'm fine to issue a motion to amend by adding the phrase that I have there.
The phrase is assure that dedicated EDO resources are in place to drive economic development.
And at least that
Yes.
speaks to the need for something.
But before we go there, I have to ask if we have, because the motion's on the table right now to, so before,
So I'm raising a motion to amend this, this motion. And then we can go back to that motion to approve it as amended.
This is a new motion.
but you're one counselor amending your motion, but the motion's on the table is different than yours. If the other three are in favor of the motion that's on the table is what I mean. So
But first, yeah, the correct procedure.
that's right.
Yes.
So now does it implicate who had moved and seconded to begin with?
Not yet.
The original one was. moved
The
and
original
seconded,
was-
But not this one, so is this a brand new motion, Mary, or amend, okay, so,
So moved by Steve, and do you have a seconder, Steve? Adrian?
council, so amend
Amend.
strategic. plan.
Amends, yeah.
You have it worded, Mary?
I have it, yeah.
To add, is it bulletin 4, Mary?
Yeah, in economic development.
And that was in objectives, you said, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the objectives area, bullet 4, add a bullet 4 in objectives area.
Can you say the exact wording, Mary?
Assure that dedicated EDO resources are in place to drive economic development.
Can you reread?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That council amend the 2024-2028 strategic plan to add bulletin number 4 in economic development in objectives to assure that dedicated EDO resources are in place to drive economic development. Moved by Councillor Deputy Mayor Densham and seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
Now, if anybody, I guess, if anybody also wanted to add to that to say remove hire rec director, I'm not to the point where I'm saying that. At this point, I'm fine with it the way it is, or to change the phrasing on that. I think now would be the time to make a suggestion like that. Otherwise, we can let it rest as is.
Which does have to, well, we'll deal. So right now it's gonna be, I think it's next on the agenda.
Yep.
So we're not, it's not like we're passing anything in regards to posting that. That should be basically accepting what's been written. So
Yep.
I think there's, yeah, so that's not gonna be an implication that will affect us before we deal with the bigger picture. So no further questions? So all in favor of the amended motion's carried. Moving on to new business.
And then we have to go back to.
Oh, sorry.
this one then.
Yeah.
Yes, add as amended. And that was moved by Councillor McDonald and Deputy Mayor Densham. You're okay with adding as amended? Do you want me to reread this?
No, I think
No?
we're
Okay.
good. So all in favor? Motion's carried. Going to 10.1 CAO Directors of Parks and Rec Facilities Job Description.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont receives the report for the Director of Parks, Recreation and Facilities job description for information purposes. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
Any questions?
So, I've read through it. I was wondering if someone could explain a little more the relationship with the current structure of rec coordinators. There's 2. How would this all kind of look with this new position?
The recreation basically, it's a one-person job at this point. The way it should be organized is this person would be the go-to for all of the recreation committees. The recreation committees would still exist. They would have to still exist. But this person would be the chair of the main committee, the art committee that exists now. We would have to update the policies and procedures for the art committee to reflect the fact that this position is now in place. That person would be in charge of making sure that all of the grant applications for that each group had their budget in place, that all the activities, making sure that the volunteers are well served, it's just sort of, it's the go-to person, something like the CAO in the municipality, the person that answers, for recreation, reports to council, as a director, would come to council on a monthly basis, that sort of thing.
Be a big change, but it
It
sounds
would
like
be,
there's
yeah.
potential for that to be great, I think. And has anyone spoken with, I guess, through the committees, with the committees about the potential of this and how they might feel? And
There's been, we spoke with Pierre and Ellen about this. Ellen no longer is taking part. She finished her job the end of December and did not, so it's just Pierre now. Basically, I got their input on this, and they did have an art meeting where it was discussed. And some of the members thought it was a very good move to get a rec director. So I think it's going to be received positively by the local committees, that they'll have, this person, this resource person that they can go to. I think it's time. And we also need someone who has some experience in facilities management and that sort of thing, because we have some facilities that maybe are not being managed to their capacity. So it's something that I think that we should be looking at, and hopefully we can attract someone to that caliber.
thank you.
I'll go to you, Blake, in 1 second. So no, if I may add, we've got great volunteers in North Stormont, which are people that are there that want to help. The only thing you got to be careful on is you cannot depend on them to lead the way. So some people are there to help, they're there, but it gives a point where you say, oh, well, this has to get done. You're almost saying, you have to do this, but at the same time, they're volunteers. Some people take it. So to have somebody that they can come up to and get the help and the resources is, I think, something that would be beneficial to the base of volunteers that we do have helping out. So Blake, you want to add something on it?
Just in support of Mary, I don't know how much council has knowledge of, but the Public Works does a lot for recreation. We basically come in, and the volunteers, a lot of them don't have the knowledge, and they're spending lots of money. And so example would be the Avamore Park. We spent quite a bit of time there. They raised money to this and that, but they didn't go through the proper procedure. I shouldn't say they didn't go through it. They didn't have the knowledge to lay that project out right, to get the bids and to get the resources to do it. And we did a lot of work there to help them. And like I said, we work for every municipality, and where we work. And basically, lots of times it comes on me to kind of plan their project. But with the COVID, this was before COVID, everything got delayed. And then all of a sudden they say, well, now we can do it. And I know with Pierre and Ellen in their role, they didn't get paid to do all this. Like if you're spending, let's say example, $100,000, you got to make sure you're being efficient and you're doing it properly and you're doing it safely and you're you build something that's gonna last. So, you know, the longest time, like we know, we worked in Moose Creek, we work in Avamore, Finch, Chrysler, you know, we try to help out as much as we can and basically it's somebody's gotta be in charge.
It'll, I think, simplify coordinating with the right people to get, get something done. So, any go ahead, Deputy Mayor Dentro.
Okay, so thank you for that input, Blake, and for the input, Mary. It's helpful because it helps me better understand, I guess, what's going on and what the goals are. I don't have as much history as our mayor does, and in the previous council, a lot of last term was built at kind of shifting the paradigm of how recs were working in the past. And I think really a lot of positive changes happen. We see the rec groups now collaborating with each other, where before that they were fighting against each other, basically fighting for budget money, fighting for public work resources against each other rather than working together. And they're working together really, really well, heavily because of the work that Pierre and Ellen have done and their knowledge as volunteers. So my first concern is that we don't want to move backwards with this. Part of the problem, part of the reason we went with Ellen and Pierre was because having somebody that's an employee, direct employee in the municipality, there was still that level of detachment that wasn't there, that was very difficult to overcome. And I know quite often the rectors wore many hats, which is always a danger. So we're going to have to be really, really careful as we go through this. The reason we have, and the mayor made this point, we have more resources per capita, more recreation resources per capita than any other municipality that I'm aware of anyhow. But that's a two-edged sword. Number one, it means we need to be really careful. We need to be very intentional with how we manage them. But number two, they only happen because we had very, very involved volunteers. And the challenge that I have with this, or the thing that makes me really, really nervous with this, is that many of the rec groups, at least the way some of the conversations happen in the ARC meetings, is they're looking for something to dump their volunteer work, the stuff they don't like doing, onto that person, who starts to become no longer a rec director. They start to become a gopher person to do all the yucky stuff that a lot of the rec groups don't want to do. And we see that with playground work and stuff like that. And I think Nancy Ann does the hiring of students for the recs and stuff like that. So it's kind of like do a lot of the administrative work that we just don't like doing. And to some degree, to Blake's point, they don't necessarily have the skills, but sometimes you need to develop those skills to be in a good position to actually manage the whole volunteer base appropriately. So it makes me really, really nervous that we're going to lose some of what we've got here. Hopefully not, but that's what makes me nervous on this. The other thing too is, are they really a rec director? I look at a salary, and I asked Mary today because we had a whole salary review done. I think it was last year, and I think it was with this council. And I didn't see how this would fit on salary progression and the different salary classes we have. Based on what I'm hearing on how this is looking to play out, I don't think it's as high of I don't think it's a director role we're looking for. To be honest, I think it's more a level D or E, which is more like a supervisor than it is a director, somebody who's not going to be above doing some of the administrative tasks that's going to necessarily do that. So I think it's more like a level E, which would be more around the supervisor, the deputy treasurer, or something like that level. Even that's where economic developer is. And again, from my perspective, an economic developer can do more for this municipality's future than the added expense that's going to go into recreation. We already have a huge percentage of our budget that's dedicated to recreation because we have so many resources. And if this avalanche starts falling, and we put more and more on that, we'll end up paying resources instead of having volunteers. We cannot afford that. So like I say, we just, I think we need to be careful not to take too much of the responsibility off the volunteers, because It was only volunteers that we have the great number of assets that we have. So I would like to see something more in the range of a level D, level E band, which starts at around 67 or 76 and goes up to 80 or $90,000 in that band. Than what it is. And like I say, I'm still very nervous because the volunteers need to be supported, but they can never be replaced. And that's what I think may end up happening. So I would really want to be sure that our current rec directors, Pierre and Ellen, if she's willing to contribute, if they haven't already, to really help shape this job description to make sure that it's a true reflection of what's expected without, like I say, the volunteers saying, great, now somebody's going to do all of our job. We can just go in and enjoy the place, because I don't think we can afford to do that.
Thank you. Any further discussions?
Oh, sorry, I know I've been long-winded, but the other thing too was when I was reading this, I actually thought the primary reason for getting this resource was to improve our revenue situation and cost recovery for the arena and Finch. I thought that would be the primary focus. I think there's a huge opportunity for that more than there is with the rec. To have that managed. At least that's when we had the report done by Pesky and Associates, that's part of what they were saying, is that our rink could be more progressive approach, and it needs some director level focus on it.
And I believe, if I may add before Mary, so I believe my view is exactly that. So there's a big potential of stepping in and having the opportunity to revamp or energize and see new factors that potentially could look at increasing revenues at the arena, not decreasing the expenses. Expenses are expenses, but if we can kind of shift where we're closer to, I know it's very hard to sustain by itself with cost recovery, but so that alone would be a big factor. Second would be looking into the recs. And I understand you say the volunteers to lose. The volunteers, there's more and more work involved now that, and our coordinators, I think, can mention it now, saying, here, why don't you do that? When they're saying, well, you know what, we don't have the time. And you have, I know Chrysler has a rec committee there that's very adamant, and they're full blown. They've always been kind of, but I mean, not every town, not every person is willing to put in that time. So they feel like if you have somebody spending 35, 40 hours at the township office that can kind of give us directions and kind of lead us, they're still going to be managing their own community centers under their committee and make their things happen. But above that, when you're dealing with the bureaucracy, you're going to have a director with experience that can say, I've seen just myself you go into an establishment, you look at that and you say, you know what, I've seen it, you can do this, which would work way better. But if you don't know any better, so if you have somebody that come in and say, hey, how about if we do this, and it just kind of elevates, I think, and that's one personal opinion that I have. Now it's going to be to see where we see it, but I think it could be a big benefit. So Mary, I'll catch up.
I think it's really, really important for council to realize that, as this municipality grows, and it's growing in leaps and bounds. The facilities, we just built a $3 million building in Moose Creek, and we don't have a facilities manager. We don't have someone who's going to say, check the roof every so often, or, check make sure that the heating system is working, or the water treatment system is working properly. We need facilities managers, and Moose Creek is a good example because it's brand new, and we don't want things to fall by the wayside. We've been very, very lucky, but there comes a time when we have to realize also that we have some very large facilities in this municipality that need to be properly looked after and maintained. And we need someone who has that capacity in the recreation department, which we don't have.
Another comment, if I might, so we may have to look at a different like revamping the whole approach. Like a lot of other municipalities, especially the big municipalities, are able to afford this because they charge for services and they charge for many of the activities and events that go on. Right now, we generally don't. And when we do, it's our rec groups charging as fundraisers, and they take the revenue to continue to keep their programs running, et cetera, to launch new programs or to raise money for new infrastructure, which then becomes another burden for the municipality. Again, all good stuff. I just want to be sure it's sustainable. And that's my biggest fear is not that these aren't good things to do. Is it sustainable? We may have to look at a different financial model because again, it's taken us all of last term and part of this term just to change the mind shift of the rec groups so that we look after the utilities, we look after the capital assets, but they still come to budget asking for more money for capital assets. We haven't fully crossed that finish line yet, right? And so to make this sustainable, in my opinion, we also have to make sure that it's going to plan out financially right. So again, I think we're going to have to continue to look at this term to understand how we can make this sustainable. Because I don't think even just hiring this rec person is going to allow us to that it's not necessarily got us there. It may be a step in the right direction, and I can support it at a lower salary rate. But I still think there's going to be work to be done there, in my opinion.
Seeing no further questions?
Could I get an opinion from the rest of council members about the salary? Because this is always the important thing here.
I'll start.
Yeah,
So, no,
okay.
I had just myself when I seen, I'm kind of looking at, and I had discussions overall to see. So for budget purposes, I can see where you want to align so that's not what I was looking at when I seen it. It was kind of, so I think that depending on the role that we could get like I mentioned to you earlier, Mary, we can get a young person coming out of university that has a degree that has but I mean to have them come in and establish. So I would see it more. I don't have but I wouldn't go at 185, 90 as far as start is sort of what I was looking at, and then going depending on what, but at least it gives us an opportunity to identify what and who we're looking at, and then determining where we go. So I don't know if we go to 110, 185. So more in line, we'd have to review the grid, and that's something that could be looked at the budget. And I see where there's the director's role, and then just below, which falls in more at I think I see 92. So I don't know if maybe that's where it would fall in line, but that's for further discussion. And even I did review and to go in through I'd like to bring maybe something changes that I would like to see to you in regards to the description, the job description as well. So I think it's at least gives us the discussion part of it, and then we'll bring it back. That work with everyone?
Yes, I'll give you a firm number where I might like it.
Yeah, I think, sorry, one last point with the deliverables. I would like to see something, I guess, in the responsibilities to kind of cost optimize or revenue optimize our arena.
Okay.
Something to that effect, so that there is a deliverable and an expectation that they're looking at ways to both modernize and generate revenue and reduce costs at the same time. Again, just to make it financially viable.
Yeah, the salary should be tied to the duties. So just to finalize what the person's responsibilities will be, and that would dictate the salary, because to me, you can't just say, I'm gonna pay you $65,000, but you're gonna be responsible for all the facilities and all this stuff, so.
And mowing the lawn. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so do you have your directions, Mary, as far as, so were they?
It's just for information.
So information purposes, so we received it, and so all in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, going on to correspondence 12.1 all the way down to 12.19. Any question? Oh, you want to read it?
Yeah. Be it resolved that the correspondence as listed as items 12.1 to 12.19 on the agenda be received. Moved by Deputy Mayor Denton, seconded by Councillor McDonald.
Any questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Denton.
Okay, I'm talking a lot tonight. Councillor Patel is gonna mock me tomorrow about this, but that's fine. I deserve it. So 12.15, housing, enabling water systems fund. We're tapping into that, or we're aware of that, we're looking at that.
Very aware of that, sorry. We're very aware of that, and I have contacted our friend that's doing our master plan to make sure that we get this done so that we can access this. It's a really good program.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Absolutely. Is there a deadline on it? Is there a deadline on it that we need to, that we're shooting for?
we probably won't make this year's deadline, but I don't think it's gonna go away. I think that the funding will probably go more than 1 year, but we won't make this year's deadline. I think it's sometime in February. I don't even have a draft yet of the master plan, so.
Now, with the master plan, did we, like, would there be potential into when you read through the infrastructure funding through our grant tax? Could they review and see if there's something that we could move ahead regardless of our wastewater issues? Or because I know, like, in regards to in collaboration with bringing Provo over to Chrysler, there's like pumping station. Is that something that could be I'm just speaking, like I said, I don't know the full details. Maybe you know best.
This program, no, this is more for building or enhancing municipal infrastructure, or mostly water and sewer. So what came to mind for me was having to increase the capacity of the Moose Creek Lagoon, because we have very low sewage capacity in Lagoon remaining, that sort of thing. The pumping station, it's not to work with developers. So it's the municipal infrastructure that needs to be upgraded or built. So it's not to work with developers.
So even though, say, if we're kicking in a portion to increase the capacity of a pump to accommodate our concerns, would not apply because we're
Because it's in
the works
conjunction with the
with the
developer,
developer.
yeah.
And if we can follow through, and I keep asking, but with the engineer, as far as, because it said 6 months, well, I'm thinking early March. I'd like to make sure, just keep whispering in their ear so that we get something sooner than later. So 12:15. Any other further questions in regards to seeing none for correspondence? So all in favor of receiving it? Motion is carried. Scheduling of our next meeting. So we have agricultural meeting tomorrow night at 10, on the 10th, sorry, at 4:30. January 18th is our fire service committee meeting at 6:30, as well as January 30th for our next regular council meeting. As far as coming events, the breakfast workshop for small businesses highlighting challenges around mental health. Do you know where that's being held? It is in Cornwall. I did get the email, but
Yeah, civic complex.
Yeah. I believe I did get an email. I'll speak through that. I'm not sure if I can attend, but maybe there is a member of council that can delegate and attend on our behalf. And I guess next we're going to be heading into a closed session.
Okay, be it resolved that this meeting adjourned to a closed session for the following reasons. As per section 239, a meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered is labor relations or employee negotiations. Moved by Councillor McDonald, second by Councillor Bajelli.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried.
Go ahead, Bert.
Thank you very much. We're gonna move back from close back into in session, Madam Clerk.
Be it resolved that the public session reopens at 8:50 PM, moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
All in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on to ratification bylaw.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 02-2024, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify council's actions at its regular meeting of January 9th, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 9th day of January 2024, moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
All in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on to adjournment of the meeting.
Be it resolved that this regular meeting adjourn at 8:51 PM, moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor McDonald.
And everyone in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank council for your patience and closed, and have a safe drive home, everyone. Thank you very much.